Mav's Coffee Clarity with Denise is brought to you in partnership with Drive Media and Consulting and their premier sponsors. Subscribe on your favorite streaming platforms and share. If you just found us, welcome. And if you're a regular, welcome back. Denise DiGrigoli has spent her life in the creative industries as an entrepreneur, helping people transform their visions into thriving businesses, working with individuals and teams to find their purpose and live their life vibrantly. On her pod, Denise delivers business intel and life hacks with wit and wisdom in short shots like a strong espresso with a solid sense of humor. Enjoy this episode of Mav's Coffee Clarity, and here's Mav.
Welcome, my friends. You are on Mav's Coffee Clarity with Denise DiGrigoli. Every week, we're spilling the beans with a show that's designed to help you move forward in work, love, and life. And come on, who doesn't need that? If you just found us, welcome. And if you're a regular, welcome back. This is where I interview some fascinating people, mavericks in their own right, doers, creative, forward-thinking people that found silver linings in their fiascos and their life challenges. We're unedited, authentic, like coffee with a friend. Stories you can trust, always infused with humor. Taped here in my studios in Connecticut, Massachusetts, virtually, and we even go on the road, my friends. Thanks for listening, subscribing, sharing. And you want to find out more about me and my consulting services and my speaking, visit DeniseDiGrigoli.com. But hey, do it after the show because we've got some really great talent here today, my friends. Oh, Kelly Leonard, Vice President of Strategy, Creative, Innovation, and Business Development at the Second City. His book, Yes, and was published to a critical acclaim by HarperCollins. HarperCollins? Okay, get it right because we're not editing it, my friends. Kelly has spoken at Aspen Ideas Festival, Microsoft, DD&B, TEDx Broadway. He's guest lectured at Stanford Graduate Business School. Just let that sink in for a minute. The Booth School of Business at the University of Chicago. Where I found Kelly was on his podcast, Getting to Yes, for WGN Radio. Over 20 years, he has oversaw Second City's theatrical working divisions. And listen to this, my friends, Tina Fey, Stephen Colbert, Amy Poehler, Seth Meyers, Keegan Michael Key, and so many others. He and his wife, Anne Libera, did I say that correct? I hope so, were awarded the Creative Voice Award in 2019 by Arts Alliance Illinois. Let's spill it, my friends. Welcome to the pod, Kelly Leonard. Wow.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I am just thrilled to meet you virtually and hopefully one day in person. So I love the fact that you said no pre-show call. I said, yes, go, Kelly. It's improv. There is no, so we're riding by the seat of our pants. I love it.
Yeah, I think I can handle a conversation without a pre-call. Yeah, I think you can as well.
What I loved about you, because you did fill out a little form, and I was like, ooh, do I ask Kelly Leonard with all this great credentials to fill out the form? But then I've got to do it right for the studio interns, right? As we're building up this whole podcast. And you said that what makes you you is you take a meeting, you have a conversation, you read the whole book, but you're unafraid to experiment and try something new. Now, a lot of people will give that last line some lip service. I'm going to try something new. But the reality is very few people follow through. How do you do it, my friend?
So I did a thing the last couple of weeks. So I've worked at the Second City for 36 years. And
considering you're only 29, you're looking pretty good.
Yeah. And I've lived in the same area essentially that whole time. So some different homes, but I drive the same way to work. All right. Pretty much. And what I have been doing the last couple of weeks is I take a different route every day.
Oh, so you change it up.
Yeah. I mean, this is not something I've done traditionally, but it was a thing where I was like, oh, let's try going just 3 more blocks this way and then take a left, or let's try going around that way. And what I found was I made little discoveries, both. But like I know my area, like these streets are not foreign to me. But I forgot that restaurant was there. I am going to go to that restaurant. Or this house got built here where this other thing was before. And I think in general, especially for those of us who are in jobs for a long time, and certainly I know this is true in relationships, novelty is what keeps you going. Novelty is what keeps relationships fresh.
So
It's what
true.
keeps you, coming up with new ideas. And so but it doesn't mean I'm jumping out of an airplane, because I'm not. I am I am scared of heights. There will be no jumping out of an airplane. I
You
don't
have
mind.
your boundaries.
Yes, I have my boundaries. That's one of them. But a simple act of driving a different way to work can, kind of surprise you. So, it can be something banal like that. And this is my work, right? A lot of what improvisation is about is elements of practice for individuals in the things that they do every day. So,
Elements of practice. This is a good spill the bean right here. The things they do every day. Like
yeah,
what?
listening,
Listening.
cooperating, collaborating, decision making. So we don't tend to practice those things very often.
No.
And for many of us, that is our work. So you would never be
So
shocked
true.
that you go to a baseball game and the players are playing catch before they start, because you get that aspect of warming up, and musicians practice and do their scales before they perform. And like in any peak performance area, there is practice before they do the performance.
Right.
But millions, if not billions of dollars are on the line in the business world, and who's practicing? Like no one. I mean,
Oh,
going to a workshop, once in a year is not the practice. So I think that for those of us who are serious about our creative industries and
right.
see the application of what we do in all other kinds of forms of work and life, this element of day-to-day practice with regard to the skills that we use, it can make the difference between good and great. And I'm good with good, but I really would rather great.
So are you the kind of gentleman that says done is better than perfect, or perfect is where we're going?
Oh no, I'm uninterested in perfect, and I'm not very good with perfect, to be honest with you.
Yeah, me
Um,
either.
yeah, I mean, there's a thing that we talk about at Second City, and my wife Anne uses this term a lot, which is you got to understand the good enough show, because it is nothing is ever perfect, and you can maybe write what you think is the perfect show, and the next night it's suddenly not perfect, and you don't know why,
Yeah.
because you can't control for all the elements. You can't control for the audience that's in front of you. You can't control for the air conditioning breaking down. You can't control for events that happen in the world that suddenly make the work you've done unperformable.
Yeah.
So
So
that
true.
happens all the time.
All the time. And showbiz is everything is so unpredictable nowadays. We're not even going to say showbiz. It's everything that's unpredictable.
Yeah,
So my question to you is, you're writing this book. Yes, Anne. I'm going to get to your podcast because I'm in love with the podcast and I'm in love with the guests. Let me
thank
tell you
you.
what I did the other day. I said to my daughter, Ava, I want you to listen to such and such episode and just get to the 8-minute mark. If you do that, it's going to be so rich. If you go the whole episode, which I think was like 36 minutes, I'm giving you $36
Yeah, nice.
because I find it so motivating. But I want to go back to your book. 30 some odd years at Second City. I mean, it's
Mhm.
fair to say you are the expert of yes and. Why did you write it? And what's the greatest message from it that you want people to hear?
Well,
I
the
want people to
genesis,
read it, but I want you to
I get
tell
it.
us what. Yeah,
I get it. The genesis is funny because it was kind of a mistake.
it was.
Yeah, in the sense that there was a woman who ran Second City for a brief period of time, and she actually sold, I don't know how, she sold HarperCollins on the idea of a Second City business book. So for those of folks who don't know, they know the famous people who've come out of Second City. That's a little bit like Saturday Night Live or Whose Line Is It Anyway, kind of combining improv and sketch. But we have this corporate division we've had for years called Second City Works, which takes our improv training into businesses and organizations all over the world. And it's very profitable, and people get a lot out of it. And this woman who worked at Second City thought she could write a book about it and convinced HarperCollins. And then that book didn't get realized, and she left the company in about a year. So our owner at the time tapped Tom Yorton, who was running our corporate division, and myself, who was running basically the rest of the theater, to fly to New York and convince HarperCollins that we could write the book. So on the plane, Tom and I sketched out what we were going to pitch. And actually, the book we pitched was called "The Revolution Will Be Improvised," which was a take on a Gil Scott-Heron song, a kind of an obscure reference, but that's what we're into. But we had this idea of areas of collaboration and leadership and communication, where all the different chapters would be. I guess we did a good job convincing the people at HarperCollins, because they said go write it. And when we had the sales team at HarperCollins was in Chicago for an event, probably like a convention or something, and we sort of said, why don't we lead them through an improv workshop so they can understand the thing they're going to be selling? Because it's one thing reading a book, it's another thing experiencing.
Test drive it, baby. Test drive it.
Yeah. And we did that, and we taught them the yes and exercise, and to a person, they said, that's the title of your book, yes and. So
okay, now you got, okay, go ahead. I got the question.
Yeah, now I got to say what yes and is.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
So this is kind of what we consider to be the number one principle at Second City. It's an orientation to the work, which is people's default position. We know this from behavioral economics, is to say no or do nothing, Netflix and chill. And yes and is a nudge, to use Richard Thaler's term, to not do that. So when you're improvising, two people are improvising, they have no script, they only have each other. And when you say no to an initiation and an offer that someone made, the scene ends. That's it.
Yeah, you cut it.
Yeah, and it's not enough just to say yes. You say yes, and all right, but what are you giving me? So the idea is you say yes and you affirm and then contribute, and they do the same. And it's not about saying yes and. It is in the exercise at first, because we're trying to teach the principle, but it's about that mindset of, I am going to, whatever you give me, it's going to be right, even if it's wrong. I'm going to accept it, and we're going to build on it, and we're going to see where that takes us. And what yes and does is get you to an abundant amount of ideas. And this is essential for people who are in creative positions. So I get brought to speak at a lot of conferences, a lot of creativity and innovation conferences, and people conflate the terms. They're not the same thing. You can have creativity with zero innovation. Unfortunately, you can't have innovation without creativity. And creativity is inherently messy. That is the place where you are just, whatever idea, put all the bad ideas up, let's go, and hopefully to get to a good idea. And the social sciences and neuroscience backs us up on this, which is you need lots and lots of ideas to get to a good idea.
Whole bunch of poopy diapers.
Yeah, and I think also people, they're very protective of their one great idea. And I hate to tell you this, but if you think you only have one great idea, find another industry to be in, because every day you need to come up with new ideas.
Right.
I think Bob Sutton, who's a professor at Stanford, cited some neuroscience that showed us that we generally have about 60,000 thoughts in a day, and maybe 30,000 of those are novel. So it's not impossible to generate thousands of ideas at all. In fact, you probably already do it. And so yes and is the beginning. It is the place where we are suggesting you put everything out there. And it happens to be, very pro-social in terms of the behavior, because people like it when you say yes to them and add to their ideas. Everyone feels they've got a part of it. So the group comes together in a very powerful way. And so that's why the book then had that title, because the HarperCollins people, and they were right, said yes and is the stickiest of ideas. And then it was just interesting because, Zappos has a yes and reading library based when the book came out. And other people have taken that on. I didn't create yes and. I don't even know who did.
Yeah, but you kind of made it like the Nike Just,
Yeah,
yeah,
the book,
you gave it the Nike hook. You really
yeah, the book came along at the right time, and it was before that term was
just do it.
co-opted by tech. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so and then the book itself was really about we want people to understand how powerful these concepts are, these ideas are, and
Mhm.
let's wrap it in a bunch of interesting stories, both not just from the corporate world, but also from all the cool stories of working at Second City with people like Stephen Colbert and Tina Fey and Amy Poehler and Seth Meyers and all the people I've been fortunate enough to work with. And I think that's why the book did well and continues to do well. I mean, it's shocking to me, how many people I'll get booked to go speak somewhere to 500 people and they'll have 500 books and I have writer's cramp still from signing them. But it's great. It's just such a gift.
So was the podcast for a second to the book?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is how that happened. Um, after I wrote the book, I actually I was kind of having a midlife crisis, and I quit Second City, or I attempted to quit.
I heard this
Uh,
on one of your podcasts. You
yeah.
for just a small moment.
So I did, and our owner, bless him at the time, because he knew I was unhireable anywhere else, sort of said, "Why don't you work as a consultant at the Second City? Keep your salary for a year. Figure out if you can build a bridge in or a bridge out." And so I got this incredible opportunity. They moved me to a new office, this beautiful office in the front of Second City with a lovely bay window. Not many people have windows in their offices at Second City. And I had a vacation. He goes, "Go ahead, take your vacation. Don't worry about it." And then when I was on vacation, I got a text from my colleague Nate, who said, "Your office is on fire." And
Oh,
I work at Second City. I'm assuming that's a bit. It was not.
yes,
Second,
and
yes,
yes, and your
and
office is on fire.
so the upscale Mexican restaurant that was immediately below my new office, they had a
Mm.
grease fire. That fire went straight up through my office, across the hallway. The firefighters were able to save the theaters, thank God, but all our offices were destroyed, along with basically everything
Mm.
that I had collected up to that time. And
Were you
we,
sick to your stomach? How
no,
did you No.
I was scared for Second City.
Okay.
And I was scared that people would be hurt. And once I knew they weren't and everyone was okay,
Mhm.
I had just quit my dream job with nothing. And I had two young kids, and we had not started saving for college. I, I was sort of like, fig, I don't know what I was doing. My wife said it was okay to quit. Thank you. So I sort of assumed everything would work out, and it did. But no, I was very much in sort of like let's just see what happens next. And we got moved to these like terrible corporate temporary offices. And then we moved to the Tribune Tower. So at this point, the Tribune Tower, which is a beautiful building right on the river in Chicago, it was obviously the home of the Chicago Tribune, but also of WGN Radio. My dad, Roy Leonard, had a show on WGN for 33 years. So he interviewed celebrities, he reviewed movies and theater, and I knew a bunch of those folks. And so it was really exciting, like a beautiful old building. I had friends at the Tribune and then WGN, and I was the book had come out, right? It had done well, and I was in this new position, and my then boss Steve and I were coming back from lunch, about to get in the elevator to go up our office, and I run into the program director, Todd Manley, at the time of WGN Radio, and he's like, "Hey, you guys want to come up for like a coffee?" And it's funny because if you
Coffee.
ask, yeah, if you ask Steve, even to this day, and he doesn't work here anymore, he said, "I knew you were going to walk out with a podcast or a radio show. I just knew it." And indeed, as we got
Coffee
to
does that
talking,
to you.
yeah, Todd was like, "Why don't you host a podcast? We'll do the editing. You can do it in the studio here. You go get the guests, and you can talk about, the work you do at Second City. You can talk about the business stuff." And so it was just sort of happened, and it was great because I I was looking for what's next for me,
Mm.
and within, you know 2 months of these conversations with all kinds of different people about the work, everything was available to me. There,
Is that chance favors the prepared mind? Like How do you feel you built that bridge? Because you didn't build a bridge in or out, but a new bridge, completely new bridge came about.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. That's a really good question. I think so.
This was there
When,
some
when
spiritual aspect of it? Like in the back of your mind, it was in the nth degree.
no,
Were you glad
here's
that you were released from those records of 25 years and you had like this whole new garden?
well that certainly is part of it, right? I was not burdened by things, but also when we were my wife Anne and I were lecturing at Stanford, as you mentioned, at the graduate school. We've done that a few times, and one of the times we were there, I wanted to meet up with my friend Tina Seelig, who I'd had on the podcast. And it's funny how many people become our friends after I interview them, but it's great. And so we got together with Tina, and we're in the quad, and I was like, "What are you working on?" She's like, "Well, I'm working on my next book. I think is going to be about luck, and the science behind luck." And then Anne, my wife, chimes in. She goes, "Kelly is the luckiest person in the world for finding parking spots. That like he can find a parking spot." And Tina goes, "Based on my research,
Mm.
it is not that Kelly is lucky at getting a parking spot. It's Kelly assumes there's a parking spot for him, so he finds the one that is there."
That's spiritual.
And
That's quantum
yeah,
physics.
it is, so I think in general what she was sort of saying, and I think this is probably true of me, which is I'm assuming I'm going to do something cool.
Mm.
And then when the cool thing is there, I do it, or I facilitate it, or whatever my role is going to be uh, in that. So I think that that's what happened, which was I did this other thing. I did it, I think, very well for a long period of time, had a lot of success in it, and it got taken away. I took it away from me. I really did myself. And then I was like, well, there's a bunch of other cool things. And I just have to have conversations with people and not be afraid to share my ideas, which I've never been afraid of. And then it turns out, yeah, they say there are no second acts,
Yeah.
but there
And
are.
you have a supportive spouse now. Did you guys always work together? I've worked with my spouse, not in the podcast, but another business for a number of years. How's that?
Yeah. So Anne Libera,
So I
I
said,
started. That's my wife. So when I started at Second City, I was a dishwasher, and
literally?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And the same guy who got hired to wash dishes the week I did was Jon Favreau, the film director.
Well,
Uh, and, and and we
did
both have
Anne like the
mullets.
way you wash the dishes? Is that what it
Well, no. So I worked as a dishwasher. I left to go work for Bernie Sahlins, who was the founder of Second City. He had sold Second City, and he was starting a new theater called the Willow Street Carnival. He's the reason I was at Second City in the first place. I was
Ah,
always going to go work for him, and the Second City was a way station before that job happened, and then that theater blew up. And I was engaged, and my friend Anne was also engaged. And in fact, I was kind of inspired because Anne, who ran the box office, was getting engaged. So I proposed to my first wife, and my wife to be didn't want me working a ton of evenings, which is what happens when you wash dishes at Second City. So
right.
Anne worked in the box office, and I said to her, Lily doesn't want me working so many nights. She goes, all right, why don't I hire you in the box office to work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday during the day, and then one night a week on Friday with me? And it's like, awesome. And so I got married. And because I knew my friend Anne was getting married soon, we both did. She caught the bouquet at my wedding. And then she got married. We went to her wedding. And then both our relationships broke up at the same time. We were the rebound relationship that stayed. So yeah, I've worked with her since I was 22. And
Is there some
we
secret to that? Like, does it come in a cereal box? Like, what is the prize? Because oftentimes people say to me, I have no idea how I could work with my spouse. I can't stand them. I said, well, why did you marry him? Really?
yeah, I
Yeah.
don't I guess everyone has their the best description I've ever heard for a successful marriage is when both parties think they're the ones that won. And that is definitely my wife Ann and I. So I'm totally sure I won, and she's completely sure she won. And I've heard her say one of the things about marrying Kelly is I knew the things I didn't like about him. We'd already
Oh,
had all the arguments, and we
right.
knew what we did like about each other. So that was just like not we could just then partner and do it. And we have always worked well together. We're very different, but we share a lot of the same
Are you
passions.
both from the same neck of the woods in the United
No,
States? No. Okay.
she's a St. Paul, Minnesota girl. I was born in Boston, but grew up here in the suburbs of Chicago. But she went to Northwestern, and then was, working at Second City when I started at Second City. So,
You guys still work together, correct?
oh yeah, we do tons of stuff together. Mhm.
Yes. Okay, so I want, well, first of all, congratulations, because to our listeners, that's a big bean right there. We figured
Mhm.
out how to stay connected and in love and working together. Okay, we give you a round of applause on that.
Good.
I want to talk about how improv and your work has helped you embrace uncertainty. You certainly have had a few very challenging moments in your life,
Yep.
and the loss of your daughter, I'm sure, being one of the most significant. So let me start off by saying sorry for that loss. I
Thank
cannot,
you.
I cannot imagine.
Mhm.
But what I have listened to in your podcast is how you've shared it with your guests
Mhm.
and how you've made sense of it, even though it was so severe. I want
Yep.
to know how you and Anne, if you want to share, made it through this. I mean, and then how is it helping you embrace all levels of uncertainty that riddle our lives?
Yeah. I
I mean, you're
mean,
still pretty powerful for somebody that, had a
yeah.
substantial loss.
Yeah. I think so, so one of the things that Ann and I worked on after I transitioned jobs at Second City was we co-led a program at the University of Chicago called the Second Science Project that looked at behavioral science through the lens of improvisation and vice versa. And this was pretty transformative because up until that time, many people have cited research connected to improvisation. Very few people have tried to create out of whole cloth improvisational exercises based on evidence of phenomenon. And that's what we did. And then our friend Ai-jen Poo at Carrying Across Generations, when we started collaborating with her, she was really interested in how that work could be taught to caregivers. So Anne and I and Ai-jen and a group from the Cleveland Clinic created an improvisation for caregivers program.
Wow.
All of this was before Nora got sick. So then our daughter Nora gets diagnosed with cancer when she was 16. It was already stage 4. It was liver and then spread to the lungs and
Did you have any
probably.
precursor knowledge, or was it boom out of the?
She was an athlete who had been complaining of pain, and
Mhm.
we took her to the doctor a number of times, and they assumed that she had pulled a muscle, and we had her in rehab. And literally, and I drive by this location. It's not a gym anymore, but it was then. I remember I just got the call from her at volleyball practice saying, I can't take this pain anymore. And that's when I drove her to the hospital and
Mhm.
emergency room. And then they transferred her to Children's Memorial, and we found out that she was so sick. And instantly, Anne and I were tossed into this situation where we needed to summon everything that we had to,
Everything,
and I mean everything. I'm talking about
everything.
money, attention, support, uh, uh, graciousness, hope, whatever. And we did, and we would never be able to have done that without Second City, without the people who ran this place, without our friends, without our community, because I mean, basically, my boss was like, whatever you need to do, you go do it. You don't
Right.
worry about money, you don't worry about. And I know because I met people on that floor at Lurie who didn't have the same support system, who didn't have the same privilege. Even then, we had to do a GoFundMe, which is
Right.
how despicable the situation our country is with regard to how we care for each other and health. No one should ever have to do that.
Exactly.
But we did, and it helped.
Mm.
And we applied the principles. So I'll give you an example. So Nick Epley is one of the scientists that we worked with at the Second Science Project. He's got a fantastic book called Mindwise.
Mm.
And he had been doing research on this idea of self-disclosure. So the study he led was that he sent a bunch of graduate students onto public transportation in Chicago and told them to strike up a conversation with a stranger.
Wow.
And before they went, they were surveyed. How awkward do you think this will be? What do you think is actually going to happen? And then after they came back, they were surveyed with what did happen, how awkward was it, all that. And overwhelmingly, people, before they struck up these conversations, they thought it was going to be the worst. I almost don't want to do this. It's going to be terrible. And overwhelmingly, when they came back, they had a fantastic time. They made friends. They had phone numbers. They had dates, whatever.
They had dates.
So Anne wanted to develop an exercise based on this research. So she did. And it's called Universal Unique. And the exercise is really simple. You take a banal topic like grocery shopping, and you have two people get together, and they discuss with each other for the first round how human beings grocery shop. Generically, universally, not how they do it, how humans do it. They do that for a couple minutes, whatever, they have the conversation. And we said, now you're going to do something different. Now you're going to talk to each other about how you personally grocery shop. And they do that. So inevitably, the room is louder, there's more laughter. And as we debrief with the participants, I always ask the question, did you learn something about the person? Everyone says yes.
Mm.
And we're not talking about, you're not sharing your childhood. You're sharing how you grocery shop. And for some people, they never make it to the actual grocery store. So it's, for whatever reason. And when we were in the hospital, because you get so many new caregivers all the time, new nurses, new doctors, other specialists, surgeons, whatever, it was very important to me that they know us and they know Nora, and not just girl with cancer. So anytime someone would come into the hospital room, I would say, I'm Kelly, this is Anne, this is Eleanor. She also goes by Nora. We've both worked at Second City for over 30 years. We have a Bernese mountain dog who's 100 pounds, whose name is Benchley, who's an asshole. Who are you? And then they would tell us. It's almost mimetic, right? It's almost like they were compelled in some way to share something about themselves. And it didn't need to be, again, hugely important, but it changed the room. And it changed the nature of relationships. These connections were made quicker. They were deeper.
Mm-hmm.
I remember an emergency room doctor who we knew in this manner. So we had called up and we're like, she's not feeling great at home. Temperature's this, whatever. And he's like, come in. And then when we got there and we were getting her settled in her room, he's like, hey, just so you know, like normally when you read the temperature numbers, I would have said, don't come in, but I know you and Anne, and I trust that if you called, she should probably come in. And it was absolutely correct because there was something wrong. But he said it. And I'm like, that's the thing I think we were able to do over that time. And so, as Anne has pointed out before, when asked about this, we were really good at being parents of a 16-year-old girl with cancer. We were woefully unprepared to be parents of a 17-year-old girl who died.
So
yeah. So that then, but I will say this: we did draw from the same well, and the well that we drew from was our connections, our people. We drew on our own gratitude for what we have had, what we have, what we lost. You can be grateful for things you lost, and like really good therapy.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean
And how is this now coming through it with your other child and your life now? And how do you use it as, I'm going to call it rocket fuel to keep going?
Yeah.
Because there's some people that they would never get up again. So for
Yeah.
spilling the beans for our audience, I mean, that's
Well, that wasn't a choice.
wasn't a choice.
It,
Well,
it,
I mean, some people
it
just
was it wasn't a choice for us. Like we had Nick, her older brother, to take care of. We had jobs we loved. We had things we wanted to do in the world. We have built our lives so that they have purpose and meaning, and so that we can flourish. So that's always something that our family did. And so, we muddled through, and we tried to tend to Nick as well as we could. He's, so we just, it was Nora's birthday last week, and Nick is living in Atlanta. He's a Shakespearean actor at the Atlanta Shakespeare Company, and then tends bar at a Mexican restaurant on the side. And
hopefully with no grease fires.
hopefully with no grease fires. And when we know on days like her birthday and her death day that we need to do something.
Right.
We don't need to do a big thing. But what we mostly have ended up doing is going to her favorite ice cream shop in Chicago, Margie's Candies. And we just have ice cream. We split a sundae. And I'll often take a picture of it and sort of post it. And those people who know. And it was funny because we did that. We went home, and then both of us got a text from Nick, who independently had gone with his roommates and got a sundae in Atlanta.
What a beautiful thing.
That's
well,
it.
You've built a culture of resilience and love in your own home. And I hope that everybody listening maybe takes a look at us on YouTube and also feels the energy in the room. I mean, so what do we want to send up to Nora today? What do we most remember about her? Where do we want to connect in with her? Because I'm for sure she's listening.
So this girl, when she was younger, she had a green headscarf that she would never take off. I mean, it was just like, it got so ratty. And it was not uncommon to have 10-year-old Nora in her headscarf on her unicycle, juggling as she rode around the block.
So she had your sense of humor as well.
Yeah. Oh, I remember, because Nick obviously is an actor and he's very funny as well. But Nick was part of this young person's theater company and did like their summer camp. And then when Nora became of age, she wanted to do it. And we went to her show. And within minutes, the three of us, our hands are over our faces because we're like, oh no, she's really funny. This is not going to be good.
All of you in the house are funny. And Bentley, or the dog, I forget his name already.
Yeah, eventually he's funny. He's very funny too.
Oh,
yeah,
he's
yeah.
funny. Okay.
Yeah, he's funny. Everyone's funny.
He's a funny asshole, I guess.
Yeah, my wife doesn't think she's funny. She always says that because she's a comedy professor and wants to own up with that, but she actually is funny.
I am, the full throttle story of Kelly and Anne, and we might have to have her on, is a story of unbelievable creativity, innovation, resilience, and empathy. So if we're gonna do a quick rapid fire as we're gonna wrap it up. First of all, thank you for your time, your sage beans. I don't know if you're drinking coffee, but I skipped over to water and put it in my coffee cup. I had like 92 cups before today, before today's episode. Rapid fire. What's your favorite improv exercise other than yes and?
Last word.
Last word. Give us a quick one on last word.
Two people get together and have a conversation. There is one rule. The first word of your response has to start with the last word that the other person said.
Let's try it. Go.
It's been great being on your show. I've really enjoyed it today.
Today, I'm so thankful for you and the story of Nora, your Anne, Nick, and all that you've done for Second City.
City I live in, Chicago is my favorite town in the world.
And the world is a much better place with you in it, my friend, Kelly Leonard. I am most honored to meet you today and thankful for you. You've heard it here on Mavs Coffee Clarity, my friends. Kelly Leonard, where can we find you?
I'm on all the socials. LinkedIn is probably the best place. I post every podcast. And then normally when I'm reading the book for the next one, I will post cool passages from things I read. And I'm reading right now. Let me just plug this.
Favorite book?
Likeable Badass by my friend Allison Fregale. And it's the subtitle is How Women Get the Success They Deserve. I want to give this book, and I think I will, to every female I work with here at Second City, but in any business, because Allison, like, she broke the code in a way that I've never seen before. What you have to deal with regard to the patriarchy is
You're not kidding,
terrible.
my friend.
It's the worst. But Allison's techniques are stuff that all of us use. And it's not, and it's what I love about it is it's not like, hey, take these 5 steps and you've got to figure it out. It's like, no, it sucks. But here's a few different things you can do. Here's a few more different things you could do. It's never just one thing. And I boil it down to this in the book, which is what you really need to do is exude warmth and assertiveness. And you have to have them and assertiveness.
Sounds like a nice Italian pizza pie by, what is her name?
Allison Fregale.
Allison Fregale. Okay, listen, it's been Kelly Leonard on Mavs Coffee Clarity. We've got so much to say. I think you're going to have to come back, my friend. Peace out. Mavs got to get back to work.
Closing with Zip and Zest. Mavs Coffee Clarity with Denise is brought to you on partnership with Drive Media Consulting and their premier sponsors. Subscribe on your favorite streaming platforms and be sure to share.